Hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Sean and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Sean Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are super excited to have fellow rogue pharmacist Pam Pesta on our podcast today. She is going to be talking how, kind of her journey through pharmacy like Janet and I had, and now how she believes that medicine should be, that let food be thy medicine. So Pam, welcome to our show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your pharmacy journey first and how you got into food being medicine.
Yeah, it's a long one. I started out as a regular retail pharmacist way back in the day, and then ended up just not being super happy, jumping from job to job, tried hospital pharmacy, compounding pharmacy, in healthcare settings. And I don't know, I just never quite seemed to fit. But over time, I just did it to kind of pay the bills. And then when my kids were pretty much graduating from college, I just said kind of, it's now my time to do something different. So I was at the time working in retail, and a lot of things were changing in a negative way for me, and it wasn't seeming to go the way I wanted it to, with trying to bump up numbers of prescriptions. And so I just said there has to be a better way. So I actually went to a local compounding pharmacy and kind of begged for a job, because they also did like a lot with supplements, and I didn't even know what functional medicine was at the time, but they also had they were working with that, and I was just really interested in how to get healthy and prevent people having to take so many medications. So it took a while, but I finally got hired and started in the lab compounding. And then as FDA clamped down on all the things that we could and couldn't do, I just kind of saw the writing on the wall and said, it's time for me to kind of pursue this. So I started taking classes, never really with the intent of getting certified, but I just kept going and going, and then finally said, why not try? So that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
Janet, what questions do you have for Pam?
So Sean and I have been stepped out of the retail setting and the hospital setting for so long since we have a compounding lab. What would you say the average number of prescriptions that an average American is taking right now?
Oh, gosh. I would guess most people are on something for chronic, a long term, but probably, I'm sure it's age specific, but if you're on a blood pressure medication, then you're probably on multiple blood pressure medications, and then they want you on the statin to go with it. So probably 5, but I could be wrong. It might even be more.
I'm sure it's definitely very patient specific, but it does seem like the more somebody goes to the doctor, the more medications they get prescribed, right?
Right, for sure. I mean, the number of SSRIs is, I don't even know, 25% of women or something are on an SSRI now, like some crazy number like that. So yeah, it's just so many. And then it just snowballs. It doesn't work. So then they add something else, or they have a side effect, and so they add something else. And it just keeps going and going.
Yeah, we were, when we were traveling, we were watching TV in a hotel, and we saw a certain drug that's actually indicated for depression along with an SSRI. So
right.
To add along with it, I don't even remember the name of it. Don't care what the name is.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder about, and look at the type 2 diabetes drugs. It's usually never one drug. It's multiple drugs to try to treat a disease that is caused by the food people are eating, right?
Right.
So tell us what your thoughts are about food be thy medicine. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was working at this compounding pharmacy for quite a while. Like, I think I was there about 14 years. And, my job had pretty much become selling supplements. And I just felt there was a part of me that just didn't feel right about that either. It was like, we didn't have these supplements. It's just like the pill for an ill mentality, only it's a supplement for an ill mentality. And I was like, back in the day, we weren't out buying, 30 vitamins to take every day.
Right.
So how were we getting our vitamins to live a long, healthy life? And it was from our food. And, I feel like we've just disconnected ourselves so much from our food system. We have access to everything in the grocery store year round. It's not how it's meant to be. We're meant to, have a garden, grow the food, enjoy that food for that season, but then move on to whatever else is available, or storage crops, things like that. And, I just got really like, something is wrong with this picture, and the nutrient density in that food is just not there anymore. I mean, even the organic movement is really sad in some ways, because, blueberries, and it's only in the US, by the way, blueberries they're allowed to put an organic label on a blueberry package at Whole Foods, but that blueberry is grown in water, like it's hydroponic. And, that how is there any nutrients except for the artificial ones that you get from chemical spraying? It just didn't sit right with me. So my husband actually had a pretty big job in the liquor industry. So we were kind of like alcohol and drugs. It was the big joke. And then, and he was a little bit younger. He did this probably when he was about 55. It just wasn't aligning with our way of thinking anymore. We got some great perks from it and trips and everything, but we were both like, there's got to be more. That it wasn't making us happy, even though, the benefits were pretty good. It was like, this just doesn't align with how we feel. And so he stepped back from that, and he started a small little organic, we call it our farm, but it's literally in the middle of a suburban neighborhood where we live. And we bought, we rent land at another location, but it's not a lot. I mean, our total amount that we farm on is probably about a half an acre. So not a lot. And you can't imagine the amount of food that you can get from just that little piece of land. And it's great. We have about 20 families that joined our CSA, which is community supported agriculture, meaning they buy a share for the whole season, and whatever we grow, we split up among all the families. So, that's been great. It's been a lot of fun. That was one of the reasons about a year and a half ago I left the pharmacy, because I just wanted to be a part of that more. And the goal was to grow a lot more herbs and things like that, where I could make tinctures to kind of help people, because I also have a herbalism certification. So that was one of my goals. Unfortunately, it all requires so much time. And between the two of us, there's not that much time in the day to do all the things we want to do. So it's a work in progress, and we're still trying to get there. You and I talked a little bit yesterday, and I was telling you, my husband is a really good cook. So we try to have dinners here at our home and just host people, showing them that you can eat healthy and still have it taste good, because people just have the misconception that healthy food just isn't good. And he's definitely raised it to the next level. And, the food is amazing. People love it. And we try to collect a little bit of money at the door, and we've been donating that money to an organization. Am I okay to say the organization?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Farmer's Footprint. And if you follow the work of Zach Bush at all, you'll see he was a physician, triple board certified, that left medicine altogether. And now he's just working around the globe, actually, to regenerate soil. And, there's so many parallels between soil health and human health. And so that's kind of my message. Even when I still do consultations from my home with patients, and I still use supplements, but my hope is it's a short-term thing, and then they kind of adopt the lifestyle, and they start to use food as medicine as well, and realize, eliminating things or adding things is the way to get yourself healthy. And, So that's kind of where our goals are, doing more of these dinners to teach people. We even talked about, trying to help people start their own little gardens. And it's just a matter of we don't have the time to do all the things that we imagine we want to do. So
Well, that's a good problem to have. You're staying busy. That's good.
we are,
Yeah.
definitely.
And now when are you going to invite us over for dinner?
Well, I've heard you made your way here before, so that would definitely be a thing. Yeah, I would love to do that.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So
great.
you're basically, Jan and I say the same thing. It's like, we sell supplements for a living.
Yeah.
But we also are honest with people. You can't supplement your way out of a bad lifestyle or diet. So
Correct.
supplements are just that. They're to supplement a good diet already. And we see the same thing. I'm not a big fan of replacing drugs with supplements. So, people are taking 30 different supplements. I'm not necessarily a big fan of that. It's like, if you do all the right things, sleep, eat right, and exercise, you shouldn't need a lot of supplements. Now, there are some of them, especially those of us that live in the northern latitudes. I think it's very difficult to get enough vitamin D. But, you look back 2 generations, 3 or 4 or 5 generations ago, and our ancestors didn't have a problem with vitamin D probably. So they even in the winter had enough vitamin D. So it was probably the fish that they were eating, the meat that they were eating already had enough vitamin D in it. So.
Yeah. And magnesium, like we could talk about that one mineral all day. There's even in our soil that we've amended and done all the things we're supposed to do, it's very hard to get magnesium out of your food today. So I don't know, roughly, I think 75% of the world's population is deficient in magnesium. And we know, 600 chemical reactions in the body are dependent on it. So that's a tough one without supplementing as well. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things about our soil is magnesium is a mineral. And as most minerals, they come from the soil. They come from the dirt, literally. And one of the problems with one of the reasons that a lot of that stuff isn't being replenished is because for bad, good, or indifferent, these are just facts. But like in our area, we live in a big agriculture community. And we have rivers that are dammed because, to irrigate from, but also to make hydroelectric power. And I'm all for the dams, believe me, because we wouldn't be living here without them. Because it's a desert. We live in the middle of a desert. There's no way we could grow food. There's no way we could live in the summer because it would be too hot. But when the problem is when those rivers used to flood every year, when the rivers flood, they take all those nutrients and those minerals and they spread them all over the soil. Well, when you don't have rivers flooding, you don't have that anymore. So the last time we had nutrients being regenerated in our soil was when Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980. That was the only way we got new minerals into our soil organically. Now, obviously, inorganically, we can do it, with chemicals. But naturally, it's hard to get good soil anymore because we control most of the rivers and the flooding.
Yeah. And then we won't even talk about glyphosate, but, the amount of chemicals that are sprayed on our food is insane. And, all those pounds of glyphosate and now atrazine that are on all the foods. And then, we wonder why our kids aren't healthy or the autism rates are skyrocketing. And, we can go down a rabbit hole with all the reasons why. But I do believe that food and chemical toxicity in the food is a big part of that. Not to mention, the 72 vaccines, which is now probably more like 90 by the time they go to college. So
I think it's 124 or something now. Seriously, it's crazy. So Janet, your dad used to talk about, Janet grew up on a ranch and a dairy farm, and her dad used to talk about the chemicals. You want to comment on that, Janet?
I do. I remember my father saying, and, he used them too, but I know he was questioning the whole process because he kept saying, I think these chemicals are going to kill us. He just had the gut feeling that what we were doing was wrong. And part of that comes back to, his father and, his father actually homesteaded. So those people had to learn how to use the amount of soil they had in their land in a proper way, or they weren't going to have a crop or a field the next season or the following season. So crop rotation and the proper nutrients into the soil was super important. And, the chemical fertilization was not there. So you had to take it all from natural sources.
Yeah.
And I still to this day remember picking strawberries at my grandmother's house. And those strawberries were not like what you buy at your local grocery store.
Right.
I mean, they were amazing. And they weren't huge either. They were small, but the flavor was so different. So you were commenting on how people are shocked at how food can taste. And I think part of it is because, the size, like my husband brought home some beets, and my mother would have never had beets that big when she took them, right? I mean, so the way we have commercialized things has really turned our food into something different, I think. Not only just the chemicals, but also the genetic part of it, or allowing a plant to go and be so big. I mean, my mom would have rejected something that large. I mean, she would just, she would have went through her garden and made sure that when she pulled something, it was the proper size, right? Because there's something that happens to certain vegetables when they've been there so long, they get woody.
Yep. Or they're just loaded with water. And
that's true. That's another point.
And they're not as concentrated in nutrients.
Right.
So, Janet, how big was your grandma's garden?
Oh, I have no idea. But she raised, she had 15 children. So it was probably, it was an undertaking. But, she had a lot of hands to help. But, she didn't, until refrigerators came in, they had to learn how to preserve food. And their preservatives weren't like what we are using today. And most of the time, they stored it. They had cellars, they stored things, canned things, did whatever they needed. But, like you said, you don't usually have certain foods in the middle of the winter like we do now, as we were living in the past.
So tell us how your grandma fertilized her garden.
Oh, yeah. So it's amazing how intelligent our ancestors were. So her garden was down from where they would have cattle or pigs. And so it went through the soil and leached down a slight little hill or slope. So it was constantly being fertilized just by nature. It wasn't directly, so we didn't have, the direct, but it was, they just used their land and their soil to do the job for them. I imagine there was some carrying and things like that because, moving. But, to me, that's amazing how they just used things in a proper setting or direction to line up how their garden was going to be fertilized over time. And can you imagine? That's more natural, right? That's what happens in the forest or, on the prairies. It's not like you have a magic spraying machine. You just have nature doing the job for you.
Yep. And we do the same. We have chickens and we let them go into the garden and, do their thing, and they help to aerate the soil, and, when they poop, it turns into nice soil, and it's great. Yeah. We don't have bigger animals, so that's not happening where we live here. But, we do get organic compost, and we compost our own. That's a whole nother topic, composting, like look at the garbage that we're accumulating, and just the food waste that could be going into that soil is just going into landfills. And, the problems are just so huge, and they just, we need to get back to realizing that, we're a part of nature, and we've just written ourselves out of that definition, and we think we're better than nature, and that attitude has, caused us. We're setting ourselves up for our own demise. And it's like when I think about these bigger issues, it's like, who cares who the president is? Who cares, what the economy is? Like, nobody's looking. Even climate change is like, I'm not going to say it's a hoax, but we're looking at it in the wrong way of how to get the planet healthy so the climate is doing what it's supposed to do. And we're just I don't know, it's kind of scary because I don't think enough people are looking at the real problem, and they're just looking at what affects them on a daily basis. And I don't know, that's what we're trying in our own little piece of suburbia here, to at least make a difference and show people that it's something that everyone can do. I mean, I think half our neighbors think we're crazy, so the other half buy
Join
our
the club.
so you don't know what way to go. But
Yeah, it's really cool when you think about how animals and plants, are synergistic together. Right. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised, but you're talking about your chickens roaming the garden and them aerating the soil with their feet. I mean, the same thing happens with cattle. The same things happen with bison. And, as animals, as mammals, we put off nitrogenous waste, and plants need nitrogen. I mean, so it's just incredible how that is fertilizer for them. And we breathe out CO2, and plants need CO2. It's incredible how animals and plants are made to work together. And of course, plants make glucose and energy, so we can have it for our bodies, and they give off oxygen that we need to breathe. It's incredible. I mean, our world is created amazingly, and we need to be good stewards of it. Another thing I wanted to mention is the importance of knowing you have a lot less waste. You're talking about our landfills. I will tell you a little story about Janet and I. We have the smallest garbage can that you can get, and we have the smallest pickup. So we get a little garbage can picked up every 2 weeks, because when you eat meat and vegetables and fruit, you don't have any garbage.
Right.
You have very little garbage. So we don't have a lot of garbage. Yep. Okay, I confess, our Amazon boxes are. We have a cardboard recycler at the pharmacy. So. So, what tincture have you made, or what one do you really want to make the most?
Oh gosh, so many. I've experimented with some and failed. One of the easy ones is I just made apple cider vinegar from our apples that were on the ground. So, and then scraps that I used when I made applesauce. So that was something that you're kind of using everything that you have. Nothing goes to waste. I've done a little bit with oregano because that has so many good antiviral and antibacterial properties. So I've done stuff with that. What else? Lavender, which I love. It's just kind of a little hobby. I haven't really done that much compared to what I'd like to do, just because everything else has been so busy. It's hard when you're trying to not waste what you grow. Like, I mean, my husband will finish in the gardens, and then at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, he's pulling out all the canning equipment. I'm like, are you serious? Like, I'm so tired. But it's kind of what you have to do if you want to use this stuff. Like you said, store it. We do have a basement where he built a little cold cellar where we store all of our root vegetables, and all of our canning jars are down there with all the things that we've grown, and tried to find ways to use them year round. We bought one of those vacuum sealers, so we've worked on freezing some of the vegetables that we grow in that, and hopefully they'll hold better than like Ziploc bags have in the past. But yeah, and also like things like we don't have animals, but bone broth from when we make chicken or whatever, we'll store that also.
Wow, it's so cool. I hope we see a resurgence of this. I mean, you look at a couple generations ago, I would watch my mom help my grandma. And we would even, as little kids, we would be the ones to break up the beans And then they'd can them, but beets, all kinds of stuff. They would spend all weekend canning stuff after, stuff came out of the garden so they could save it for all winter long.
Yep, same. My husband's constantly. I mean, it's hard because I do still have a consulting practice where I help patients. So to try to keep up with all that, plus help him, plus do the herbs, it's overwhelming sometimes. But I guess, like you said, at my age, like I don't want to just sit in a rocker and watch TV. So it's a good thing that we're as busy as we are. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming, but it's all good in the end.
Well, I got to tell you too, I should have said it when we first opened the podcast, but you've got a beautiful landscape behind you. Mm-hmm. It's one of the cool things about what you're doing, getting out in the garden and stuff. And we've had a podcast just dedicated to this is, getting outside and just enjoying nature and moving is so important for our health. There are so many benefits to just getting outside of what we don't even know. I mean, we do know that sunlight produces vitamin D in our skin, but there are neurotransmitters and all kinds of chemicals that are produced in our body just from being out in nature that we are never going to realize all the benefits of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of cool. Like when I first started doing consults here versus in the pharmacy, I didn't know how people would receive it. This is our home. It's not like I have a big office. I really don't. And so far, every day that we can do them outside, we're sitting right where I'm sitting now doing these consultations. And, people actually love it. I wasn't sure how it would go. And it's just kind of become my thing. I mean, I'll ask them, if you really don't want to be outside, we can do this indoors. But if it's decent out, we're out here. And, they end up wanting a tour. Like my consults end up taking like 3 hours because people want to see what we have going on. And so it's not very cost effective.
Right.
But it's awesome because they love what we do. I've had a few patients that have joined our CSA and they buy vegetables from us now. And one thing we didn't mention, we have bees. So we do honey too. Like I have a big thing of propolis right now that I'm trying to figure out how to do something with it because, I never was a beekeeper before and we never had as much propolis as we seem to get this year. So I have enough to do something with it, but I don't know how. So I have to research that later on today. But there's so many cool things. The beehive is miraculous also. And, that's another thing we are neglecting as humans. And if the bees are gone, our food is gone. So there's just so much that we need to pay better attention to and not focus so much on the things we're also focused on.
Absolutely. So as we wrap this podcast up, Pam, tell us what you have a passion for.
Oh gosh. I mean, I guess my biggest passion is to use food as medicine for myself and to spread the word to as many people as I can that's the answer to so many of the world's problems is, if we don't have planetary health, we don't have human health. And if we don't have human health, then what's the point of talking about all the other things? The economy doesn't really matter if you're not healthy. And I mean, I guess a little side note, I experienced it firsthand. I ended up with Lyme disease during a really stressful time a couple years ago. And I do believe I've been bit by ticks many times. I believe that my immune system was just like struggling because of stress. And, we don't realize how much stress plays into our health. And when that happened to me, I ended up with 2 frozen shoulders that lasted about a year. And, you realize like when you can't do the things that you love I couldn't literally do anything practically. I couldn't even put my coat on by myself. Like you realize like people talk about it. Like if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
That's right.
And you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not healthy, like what good is it? So,
right.
I mean, so many people are just so worried about this election and what's going on in other countries, which obviously we have to worry about what's happening in the world. But there's just so much that people don't pay attention to themselves and, how our own health and the fact that we have to get back to nature to be able to get healthy, or it's just not going to happen. And that's why I sit out here when I do what I do, and sit here as much as I can, or walk around the garden with bare feet, and go interact with the chickens and the bees, and just realize we're a part of them. And that's probably the biggest message that I want to get out to people. So
Amen. So if anybody has any questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Pam?
You can find me on the Institute for Functional Medicine website under Find a Practitioner if somebody is looking for a consultation. I'm also part of the FLCCC as a practitioner there to help people with long COVID or vaccine injuries. And then, I have a website. It's not super developed because time, but it's Pam Pesta Wellness. And then and also, those other places will give people my email address to reach out if they have any questions or are interested in any of the things that we do.
Wow. I love it, Pam. Thank you for being on today. You've helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So I appreciate you being on and sharing.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you guys.
You're welcome. And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Sean and Janet Needham. Tune in to our regularly scheduled podcast Monday, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.